I'm an LGBT plus rights activist, as you guessed, and I'm a refugee. I'm also an engineer. So I grew up in a community watching women being under the control of men. Gender is a bit confusing. I'm going to refer to myself as a woman today. I'm not saying that all of Egypt is like that, and I'm not saying that we're perfect in the UK, but on average, I think it's better here. And on average, you can get away with a lot more kind of controlling women and stuff in Egypt. But the women who I looked up to who got credit for their own actions, for what they did, not what their husbands or their dads or their sons did, were women who got themselves an education. So it was something from a really young age I knew was quite important. So I focused on my studies, and I skipped 2 years. I was a good kid at school. I'm obsessed with electronics. Like, one of my earliest memories was realizing that the people on my TV are not actually little tiny people living inside my TV. But that was just like, wow, mind blown. How do humans do this? I want to take apart all the electronics, including my mum's mobile phone, and breaking it and not being able to put it back together. Sorry, Mum. So I was super excited because I was going to study, hopefully, electronic engineering when I found out that this magic is called electronic engineering at 16. So I wasn't just going to study a male-dominated subject. I was going to be one of the youngest to have ever studied it. So I was super kind of excited. And in 2007, actually, my mum and my little brother and my little sister were here in London on holiday. It's something not a lot of Egyptians can do. Travel is a lot more, yes, a lot more of a luxury in Egypt than here. People here can just kind of take off and go on a flight and stuff. But I was lucky enough that my family were able to afford this kind of thing. And kind of following a series of events, I grew up around a lot of domestic violence, but we were never really supposed to stay here. But following a series of events, my mum decided enough is enough, I'm going to claim asylum here. And it was the first time I heard the word asylum. I had no idea what it meant. So I just decided to focus on my studies. They said they're moving us to Wales, and I was like, what? Isn't that a fish? And then they showed me on the map, and I was like, are you deporting us? So yeah, I came here, and actually I was in Link's house on Newport Road. Maybe some of you know it. It's like a asylum seekers shelter. It's not the nicest place. We were all in one bedroom. There was no TV. We had to queue up for food 3 times a week, 3 times a day. We weren't allowed any money and stuff. So all I knew was inside the hostel. And one day it was close to Christmas time, and the person working there said, yeah, do it right. And I just thought, everyone outside these doors speaks this language. I speak a little bit more Welsh than some people born in Cardiff now. So. Anyway, I rambled on a bit. Where am I? So I finished my A-levels here. I went to Catays High School, if you've heard of it, and then I applied for universities. And turns out I was accepted by all universities. You apply for 5. And, but then I found out that I was accepted as an international student, so someone who travels to seek education, and I was here living, seeking safety. I was not an international student. I was asked to pay over £20,000 plus per year for an engineering degree, while at the same time, as an asylum seeker, I was not allowed to work, so I couldn't kind of dream up to save this kind of money. I wasn't allowed to sorry. I wasn't allowed to access student finance, I wasn't allowed to access the benefit system, I wasn't even allowed to travel to try and find education elsewhere. I was trapped. There was nothing that I could do. I had an A-level in Arabic, Maths, Computer Science and Welsh back, and I took the most legal route there is. In a country where there's already a low kind of percentage of engineers, but even within that minority there's another minority. Only 8% of engineers in the UK are women. The lowest of all of Europe. 72% of that 8% end up falling out because it's too male dominated. So it doesn't even make economic sense. Is it just racism? I don't know, I'll let you decide that. So, yeah, I was put in an impossible situation, like some of my friends here know, living on £5 a day, because I was lucky some people don't get any money at all. And you know, the thought of kind of buying new socks or tampons was terrifying, let alone something like a raincoat or anything like that. I was soaking during the winter. So you have to kind of sign as if you're on bail, even though you haven't done anything illegal. You have to go to the Home Office, you have to leave your school and everything, and go and sign and be like, yeah, still here. So one day, I forgot to sign on the right day, and they stopped my money. They stopped at £5 a day. I had to come out to my mum at that point, so I was kicked out of the house as well, and I had to eat from the bins. And it was a habit that then stayed with me. So I don't know if you can do it anymore, but I'd go behind Tesco's and get some food out from the food bins, and that's how I ate, and there was nothing else that I could do. At 17 and a half, I was advised to claim asylum in my own right. So my family's claim didn't go very well. They were still in the appeals process. But as I was coming to be 18, my mum's solicitor advised me to do a case based on my sexuality and apostasy. And you have to give evidence, right? You have to prove your sexuality. You even have to prove your religion. You can't just be like, I'm not Muslim anymore. You'd be like, no, maybe you are. I had to spread my legs for a doctor to present evidence about my vagina at court. I had to describe the first time I had sex with a man in detail. Did it hurt? Was I sexually aroused? I was 16, describing this to a 50-something-year-old white man. How exactly did I have sex with women? Did I use fingers or toys? This was my evidence to court. And if this is too uncomfortable for adults here to listen to, then how was it ever okay for these things to be asked of 17-and-a-half-year-olds here in Cardiff, here in Newport? And how do we, to this day, not have any form of official apology? One day, there was try not to get too emotional. There was an immigration raid on my family home. They broke into my family house, and I wasn't sleeping there that night. It was complicated because actually my family still had another court hearing at court, so I'm not sure how that happened, but they broke into my family house, and while I was not sleeping there, they dragged my little brother and little sister out of bed, along with my mum, and put them in a detention center. Except in this country, we're not allowed to detain children, so we call them pre-departure family accommodation instead. They're detention centers. You're not allowed to see your friends, you're not allowed to exit the place, you have to, everything is watched. You're not even allowed your mobile phone in if it's got a camera on it. So actually we got like an emergency hearing at court, and we were granted an injunction. So I called my family and was like, hey, you're gonna get out. 15 minutes later, someone from the Home Office called the judge, literally called the judge, and said, we've spent too much money on a charter flight for this family, for this mother and her 2 children, to cancel the flight. The deportation must go ahead. And they've deported them to a country that I'm not allowed to ever visit, and here I am in a country that they're not allowed to visit either. Within a matter of months, I was given status. I was allowed to stay in the UK, and as you can imagine, I wasn't feeling very well. But the first thing I did was apply to universities, because we, as refugee women, know the importance of education. We know how it can change our lives, and we know how it could be our way out. I just graduated a few weeks ago. I've worked for a few cool companies. Maybe you've heard of Intel. Yeah, I've worked for Intel. I've worked for Fujitsu. Actually, they're maybe you haven't heard of Fujitsu, but they're one of the biggest electronic manufacturers. But I've worked for them in Japan, so I've traveled to Japan, and I was sponsored through my masters by one of the biggest kind of British engineering companies, and the whole process took 6 to 7 years of your life on hold, of me not being able to do any of that, of me not being able to contribute to the economy. Like, we're forcing people to not work while it's costing us money, I felt invisible. I'm part of the rainbow, but the rest of the rainbow doesn't acknowledge me when I go to Pride or mainstream LGBT events. It doesn't feel like I'm part of that. And I guess I'm just here to say that we refugee LGBT plus people exist, we asylum seeker LGBT plus people exist, and we BAME LGBT plus people exist. So thank you for listening.